Hey everybody, or hello world, as Kim would say. This is Connor, Big Red SEO. Today we're chatting about WordPress, specifically WordPress 5.5. It's the new release that came out this month. Let me do two quick things here. So I'm on my own. Kim is running an event today, so I am doing the Facebook Live. Let's see. The main things that I want to talk about, some of the issues that we ran into when we started updating some websites and things like that. So we're going to chat about those. Some of the plugins, themes that also break in this whole process. And then some of the fixes that you can do to resolve that without having to downgrade completely. So, I mean, downgrading, of course, is always an option, but generally, you want to stay with the latest and greatest. And let's see, I've got pages of notes. I've got my phone full of notes. I've got my head full of notes. And I got a glass of water. So let's go ahead and just dig right in. So if you have questions, comments, anything like that, put them down in the comment field, and I will keep an eye on this screen, and I will answer as best I can. So, let's see. So the big thing, of course, with the update, it's another big update. WordPress went through, they removed a bunch of bloated code, stuff that was in there from before. I say it was bloated, but it really isn't like awful stuff. It's stuff that they used to use in the past, but they don't use it anymore, right? So some of the things that they got rid of, there was code in there for supporting older browsers. You wouldn't think it's water, would you? Anyway, so specifically the code that we're talking about is for Internet Explorer version 6 through version 9. So essentially they went in, they removed all of that extra code, stuff to make things happy. So if you've designed a website or worked in a website at all and loaded it up in an old browser or Internet Explorer 8 or 9, a lot of times you'd see things just kind of all over the place. This code basically allowed all of that to function well. I wouldn't say correctly, but it functioned better. So those are the main things that they removed. Now the thing is, sorry, I'm just checking this part here. The thing about the code, I don't think they went far enough. Internet Explorer 10. That was stopped support by Microsoft back in 2016. So why does WordPress still want the code in there for, old systems, basically? Now, the reasoning behind it, Matt Mullenweg, the guy who runs WordPress, or the top dog there, his thing was he wants to support older browsers, that not everybody throughout the entire world has the latest browsers. By that same token, I think that by programming things that is 4 years old, or making sure things that are 4 years old is still compatible, I think they're holding back the software. So there's a lot of things that they're trying to do, things with the CSS, the version 3 of CSS and HTML5 and all those things that are out there, and yet they're having to support these old instances. Not really the way that I would normally recommend things to be done. But I'm also not the owner of WordPress, so what do I know? All right, checking this here, things are still good, so I'm okay. So in the grand scheme of things, the full list, so basically what I have here, the main things, there's a whole new user interface for the new version. They have uploaded 126 new icons. You're thinking, where are they going to put 126? Well, essentially, all the old icons that were in there, they redesigned them. So they now have curvy edges. You probably won't even notice that it's a thing, but they did it. So they also updated the block design. So Gutenberg uses blocks. And when I don't know if you've used it or not, but when we used it last year and even 6 months ago, the interface is still clunky. It wasn't separated nicely. You couldn't tell what it was you were editing. You couldn't drag things to places that you needed to. Well, a lot of that has been fixed in this update, okay? So that's good. They've also worked on stuff for inline image editing, and Kim loves this. Essentially, you can now go into the media editor and you can resize the image from there. So you can do your cropping, you can do your coloring, stuff like that. It'll save the image as a separate image, so at any time you can go back and revert back to the original. So they've made that inline editing easier. My word of caution on that is that a lot of people don't realize that they need to optimize the image before they upload to begin with. So they'll go in, they'll upload an image that's 6,000 pixels wide, and it might be 6 or 7 megs in size. If you're going to rely on your web host to basically make those modifications for you using that inline image editor, you're using CPU power at your web host. So I think as people start doing that with large images, the web hosting companies are going to be sending emails to people saying you need to upgrade your hosting account. There are ways to limit that. As a web designer, you can go in there and basically state you can't upload an image larger than 2 megs, let's say. So you can do things like that to kind of stop users from over-exercising the servers that they're on. That's the nice way of putting it. Users should optimize before they upload. Personally, you know, yeah, it's got the inline image editor, and I think it'll be fine in some cases, but as often as possible, you want to do all that work yourself offline, whether that's with Photoshop or GIMP or what other softwares you want to use. Make your edits out there, then upload the image, and I think that's going to be better for everybody, your web host, you, and the user experience. But they did add it, so that's kind of cool. One of the probably the awesome thing, awesomest word? Anyway, one of the more awesome items that has been put into WordPress 5.5 is the feature called lazy loading. And what this is, when a user goes to the website, and you've first got an image there at the top of the screen, you might have a long page and it's got all these images down below. Well, in the past, the server would, or the browser would load every image on the page. Now with the lazy loading, it only loads the first part, and then it's when you scroll, then it starts to load in other images. The benefit of this is that it's going to make a website load faster, or it'll appear faster to the user because they're not having to wait for everything else to load. Disadvantages would be with a slider, for example. If you've got 6 or 7 images in a slider, it's got to load, and that slider's at the top of the page, it's got to load all those images. Even though the image is not displaying at the time, it has to load them all in. Now there are sliders out there. Smart Slider is one. Elementor has a slider in there too, where those other images that are not the next image, but the image after that, that's put into a lazy loading or put into a queue that it won't load up until the next image in line loads. So, for example, image 1 loads, image 2 is on standby. Once image 2 loads up, image 3 is on standby. And that's how that works. So it still gives the idea of a faster website. Now, the lazy loading code has been available for the last year or so. We actually implemented it on a number of websites. We modified the functions file inside of WordPress. We inserted the line of code to add in lazy loading, so our users got that benefit. The advantage now is that that's now inherent in WordPress, so we no longer have to add that kind of code in. So that'll be good. Websites, you should see them loading faster. So that'll be great. As I said, there are issues with themes and plugins out there. We updated, I think it was 47 or 48 websites in the past 2 days. And we noticed a number of different plugins that failed. We also looked at different online forums and found people with issues. So I've got a listing of those also here. Rant. Let's go on the rant time, because it's been a while since I ranted and I got no one here to stop me. Kim never stopped me to begin with, but you get the idea. WordPress has gone through and they have removed wording from their documentation and in their actual source code, the actual files that are uploaded to the website, what they are deeming derogatory terms or making their users feel uncomfortable, their coders and things like that. So from now on, the word whitelist has been removed and it'll now be called previously approved. Blacklist, which is when you don't want something to happen, that's now going to be called disallowed. And webmaster, you're no longer a webmaster, you are now a site admin. I think it's a step too far. That's my own personal thing. I think George Carlin, I mean, to paraphrase something that he had said years and years and years ago, he talked about the 7 dirty words and the derogatory terms and things like that, is that no word is inherently bad. It's the affliction or the thought of what people associate with it. And that's how a word becomes bad. I don't think the word blacklist is wrong. You know, you go to a club, you could be blacklisted. You go to a casino and you cheat, you're going to be blacklisted. So I don't think that's a bad word, but they've removed it all from the code. WordPress has now removed it all from all their documentation. So it is what it is. You know, it's not going to make or break anything. It's just kind of one of those, really? That was in the documentation? Really? That had to be removed? Okay. So there you go. That's my little mini rant as to what's going on there. So let's talk about the items that are going to break inside of a website. Yeah, let's talk about the items that are going to break. So the ones that we've run into, there's particular themes and particular plugins. The themes that we've ran into that had issues was the Avada theme, OnePress, and Enfold. Those are really popular plugins that are, or themes that are out there, and we've run into issues with the Avada. We've seen other people reporting issues with the Enfold, and it all stems around one particular item, and I'll get to that in just a second. The plugins that we saw that were items causing issues, WPBakery, I can't remember what that was called. It was called something else again. But WPBakery is one. Updraft, which is a backup plugin, that had issues. WooCommerce, you know, it's made by Automatic. It's made by the guys who make WordPress. That had issues. You could no longer go in and modify content for the products. You weren't able to update anything. NetGen Gallery, which is a paid plugin. They have a free version and a paid one. The paid one is what we saw the issues with. And then TI Wishlist, which is a wishlist plugin for WooCommerce. They had some code issues in there too. So both the themes and the plugins, the issue that's coming up has to do with jQuery. And particularly, it has to do with what's called jQuery Migrate. So what that is, and I wrote down my notes as to dates and stuff like that, but jQuery handles a lot of the JavaScript. It's kind of a bundle of things. It is its own code. It looks very similar and acts very similar to JavaScript as a whole. But it has its own bundles and it has its own functions, and generally makes life easier for web designers. So we use it. But the jQuery team has been recommending to WordPress to remove the version that they bundle with WordPress. It's an older version, and they keep installing what's called jQuery Migrate. And jQuery Migrate was a set of tools or a plugin feature that allowed developers and designers that if you didn't update to the latest version, then you could go ahead and use jQuery Migrate, which had old code in it, but would allow your plugins to work. It's generally not good to keep old plugins around for a long time, or overriding the new feature rules so that you can use old rules. So here's the issue with everything is that when WordPress 5.5 came out, they removed the jQuery Migrate 1.x. So whatever the version was, they removed it. It's removed out of the code, no longer referenced, things like that. The goal is to upgrade jQuery as a whole. So in the next update, WordPress 5.6, they will be releasing the new version of jQuery and the new version of jQuery Migrate. And then in version 5.7 of WordPress, they will be removing jQuery Migrate altogether. Okay, so I said jQuery Migrate a lot. Maybe it'll get picked up in the video feed on YouTube, and somebody will find this video. But essentially what's going on, jQuery, the latest version, is 3.5, and that was released in April 2020. So that's this year, a couple months ago, right? jQuery Migrate, like I said, it's to allow older plugins to run without having to remove items, things like that. It was designed or set up to handle jQuery 1.9. So between 1.8 and 1.9, there was a complete rewrite of how jQuery operated. And as a result, web developers across the board, sites were just breaking. So they released this patch that was supposed to be a temporary fix. jQuery 1.9 was released in January 2013. So that's 7 years ago. Designers, developers, theme makers, like the ones that I've listed here, all still use that old code from 2013, and that's a problem. So what WordPress did was, by stripping that out, it now forces everybody to use the later stuff. Now, we've all had notices on this for the last 6 weeks that this was happening, and a lot of people went in and made their edits and updates and things like that. But some places didn't, and now they're facing the aftermath. There are solutions. WooCommerce already has a patch. They've released it. Just install it. You're good to go. Avada, they released a new version of their theme. Enfold released a new version of theirs. WPBakery, they released theirs, but the problem is that WPBakery was included with a lot of theme forest themes. And what happens is that people would download the theme, get everything to run, but then they'd never actually buy the license. You get a license for it for free for WPBakery to use it, but it's bundled with the theme. So if you don't continue to update the theme, then you don't get the new bundle. Or if that developer didn't update the jQuery, then that didn't happen either. So, so you can go to WPBakery and buy their software directly and install that on your website, but that might delete things that your theme developer has already put in there. So this whole push anyway is to kind of remove all of that, make sure developers are using the latest and greatest pieces of code. So if you are having issues, you can roll back to the version previous, or there is a plugin called, I don't know. Don't search for I don't know. No, it's called jQuery Migrate Helper. If you go into WordPress, go into the plugins, do a search for jQuery Migrate Helper. You can install that plugin, and that will still use the old 1.9 version of jQuery Migrate. And that'll at least get your website to work. Now, like I said, you should be going through, you should be updating, your theme developers should be updating and stuff like that. So if you're forced to install that, contact those theme makers, contact those plugin developers, tell them you want the newer version, and basically get their ass together. So you have a fix. jQuery Migrate Helper, that'll at least do a fix, but you know, that's a patch. It's a patch of a patch from 7 years ago. I mean, don't be using it. But like I said, WooCommerce even had the issue, and that's part of WordPress themselves. So, you know, it's oversight. It's things that people overlook. One other item that we ran into was we ran an import of blog posts for a user. So we went to Tools, Import, and ran the WordPress importer. We selected the posts to import and then clicked the option to import images and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, the images were not importing. Again, that had to do with jQuery. We got that in there. Everything was working. WordPress will be coming out with a new patch update. Once that is, that tool should all fix itself. But for right now, we added that code in, and that resolved it. Let me see. So we're almost 20 minutes in. The one item that I want to just show you real quick, it's called the block editor. They've redesigned it completely. Now, we use Elementor a lot. We've used Divi in the past. We've used theme builders and Beaver Builder and Themeler and all those kind of guys. But Gutenberg is not going away. The block editor is another enhancement on that. So let me just show you what's going on with that, and we'll see what's in there. Let me find the buttons. It's going to go black for a second here. Or not. Hey, look at that. All right, that's a Facebook admin page. Anyways, so this here, when you update WordPress, this is essentially what you're going to get, is this kind of a login screen. Before you do that, go to this website or make a backup. You don't have to go to this website, but makeabackup.com is a website that we're building out. But basically in here, this little video here, how do you make a backup using the file manager or using cPanel, the file manager inside of cPanel. It's a 2-minute video. It'll show you how to make it using the files and then exporting the database. Do that, make sure you have a backup, and then update to WordPress, okay? So once you're in WordPress, like I said, this page here, it's just gonna give you the rundown, a lot of things I've talked about. Here is the highlights from the block editor on how that all works. But what, just to see it in action so that you have an idea, under posts, we'll add a new post. Here is some text. So basically, when we load up the page, there's actually each one of these are blocks. So what they did, they made this easier to see. You've got it up here also. When you click on this, you could now determine what the block is, whether it's a paragraph or whether it's a button or whatever you want it to be. Before, this used to have a long scrolling list. They've removed that completely, and now they're using when you click the Browse All, it opens up a side panel over here with all the different features, you know, inserting a YouTube video and whatever. The problem that I have with what they've done is that this is not a pinnable item that I can find. If it is, let me know so I can use it. But essentially, if I'm adding in a block, let's say a paragraph, once I click it, and I've got my area for the paragraph, I no longer have that sidebar. I've got to now either click back to here or up here on the left, click that plus. That's a shortcut for the full deal. So that's kind of an annoyance that disappears. You know, they did move to this full screen editor rather than before, when it used to look like this here on the left-hand side. So when they got rid of that, this is now the editing mode that they use, which they call full screen, and that's why they have this a sidebar. I mean, you need that real estate for that sidebar, right? Functions that they have in here that are kind of cool, what they've added in is called patterns, and essentially these are templates. I don't know why they didn't call them templates, you know, block templates, but anyways, they're called a pattern, and when you click on it, you can see this is going to insert 2 images and then a text area below. If you need to group items together, so if you wanted to upload or move this up the page, you just click the up arrow here and you'll see that's now above my junk text, or move it back down so that the junk text is up here. If you wanted to group an item together, you just click the item and then we hold shift and we click the other blocks up here, and that now gets everything together in one group. And over here now you can use these functions to either style or add background colors and things like that. An item that I'm not too impressed with on this, I mean, some stuff you can do like highlighting. You can change this to a superscript or a subscript and things like that. You can see here you can change your that's for the block itself, changing colors for whether it's the text areas or the background of it itself. The problem or the item that I don't like is when it comes to the topography, and then you can add in a custom size here. Well, it doesn't update everywhere in the website, and personally, I'd rather see it update everywhere. So for the most part, that is what's going on with basically with those blocks, with those patterns, that block pattern section. You can save your own block patterns and save them as templates, so that's always good, right? Will I be using the Gutenberg editor anytime soon? Personally, probably not. I'll probably stick with Elementor and whatnot. From a posts end of things, sure, I can see an advantage for that without getting all crazy. But every time you hit enter, it makes a new paragraph block, and I don't necessarily want a new block for a paragraph. I want that all to be in one area, and then I can set the styling right there if I needed to. Of course, setting the styling in there to begin with, it's inline styles, that's bloated code, that's no-no in SEO. There's give and takes throughout the whole thing. But overall, the update itself, the 5.5 WordPress update, it's a good update. It is going to be faster for many people on their websites. Like I said, I didn't have too many issues. I had a couple that I ran into. I had to revert back the items, make a backup. Here it is. I got to figure out where my hand is. It's up or down. But anyway, make a backup before you do anything. Make sure you have a backup. Then run the update, and then kind of go from there. Let me see. One more item here. Let me share that screen one more time. See, I told you it was going to go black. There it is. Let me show you just one more item. And it has to do with the plugins. It's one of the features that they're touting that they love, and I'm on the fence on it. I have my own issues with it. Let me get into the admin here. So when you go under plugins and you can see what's installed and so forth, here on the right hand side you can now enable the auto updates for particular plugins. I'm not a big fan of that. They do have some code in the back end that is checking the PHP versions to make sure it's compatible, but it doesn't check everything. It can't check all the themes. It can't check custom functions and things like that. So it just checks whether this is compatible with WordPress itself. And then you just click auto update. So for me, this one I would trust, the SG Optimizer. I click this, and now you can see that it's automatically updating. Up here at the top, auto updates enabled, and then auto updates disabled. So that's kind of a neat little thing. Where I would use it probably the most is here under the themes. The 2020, so when we build a website, we use Astra quite a bit. So we've got the Astra, we've got the custom theme that goes with that, but we always install a default, whether it's 2020 or ULID or something like that. Hello theme is another one. But these themes update from time to time. So again, you can click enable auto update, and now it'll keep that one up to date. When you do it, it takes an hour or so before it actually puts you into the queue of updates, but now that one will be ready to update. So that's good news. I like the idea of auto updating, and I hate the idea because you don't get a chance to check things out, so use a staging environment, check things out over there. There is a new line of code inside of WordPress for the 5.5 that specifically deals with web hosts, that they declare whether it's a production environment or a staging environment. So by default, it's always going to be production, but a web host can declare whether something is in staging, and if so, you can have different things run for the staging auto updates over here, but not an auto update in your live version, or showing certain colors in production but not in the live. And those can be set both from a theme level and a plugin level, or using the functions PHP file in WordPress. So this is very much a technical review of things. Like I said, overall, WordPress 5.5, I like it. I don't have too many complaints on it. Follow us here on Facebook, so we'll add up those. Facebook.com/BigRedSEO. I'll have all my stuff on there. Twitter.com/BigRedSEO. That'll be for articles, news things out there, SEO related. And of course, YouTube.com/BigRedSEO. I'm going to break this particular video up into smaller chunks and put that up onto YouTube so that you can hunt and peck and find it easier. We take all our videos, put them up onto our website also, so check out bigredseo.com. All our stuff is there. And I think that's everything on my list. If I just double check, code stuff, UI. Plugin updates. So normally when you do an update, you just click the button that says update. if you're buying a theme or buying a plugin from somebody else, you can now just click add again. So you can add a plugin and then just insert the zip file and it'll overwrite your previous one. It'll ask you, are you sure you want to overwrite this file or whatnot? But that's kind of neat. You don't have to use FTP, or you don't have to go into File Manager and remove the old paid plugin and then install the new one. You can now do it all from a zip file. That's something that has been on the request list for 5 or 6 years, and they've now finally implemented that. So that was kind of cool. From a developer end of things, template files, passing data between template files. So if you're wanting to pass something to a header function, you've got a header, open bracket, close bracket. Well, now you can pass the arguments directly in there. So basically $args, which is the arguments. So you no longer have to call global variables. So before you had to say, basically include the global variables and then make your reference from there. Now you can just call the specific template and call the arguments from there. That's going to lead to cleaner code from a developer end, and it's going to lead to faster websites because you're not having to load in all the variables. You can only just pull the ones that you want. A little more technical than what most people are going to deal with, but there are things that we saw and that we kind of liked as to what was going on. But that's it. So Facebook Live, that's there you go. I got nothing else for you. Actually, I got a ton of stuff, but I'll bore you if I keep talking. So I'll end it there. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Check us out on YouTube. Put the comments over there too. Or then send us an email, sales@bigredseo.com, and we're happy to chat there too. All right, guys. That's it. Have a great day. We'll talk again. Bye now.